Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Sex, Lies, and Consciousness with your luscious hostess, May Vu, broadcasting live every Monday at 12 noon Pacific Time.
Hello, everyone. I have another awesome Sex, Lies, and Consciousness show for you today. What makes relationship last? We all want this, and yet it's so elusive, isn't it? Not only do we want it to last, we also want it to be yummy and lasting and lots of fun sex and meaningful and deep and profound and easy. We don't like to say that, but we do want it last and make it easy too. And so today that's what I'm hoping that we will be exploring with my friend Lance. I don't usually have the show to interview experts. I usually like to talk to my friends and talk to anyone that I'm introduced to on these topics, these angles of sex and of our relationship to our sex through lies and through raising consciousness. And today's a little different because my friend Lance actually did a study, and he studied 86 gay couples who are who are in long-term relationship, and he studied on what were the components that made him last. And I thought that would be so much fun for him to share what he learned. So he'll be here. He's here to talk about that and also to share about his life and how he does relationship and how he does his sex, so that we can all partake and learn and raise some consciousness and bust up some lies that we may have in ourselves. So Lance, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, May. It's great to be here.
Yes. Lance, tell them a little bit about yourself, age, demographic, how you do life, relationship, sex, so that we can have a sense of who you are.
Okay. I turned 59 yesterday, so I'm getting used to that.
Happy birthday. Happy late birthday.
Thank you. I'm a white gay male. Work as an organization consultant and executive coach. I grew up in South Florida, in Fort Lauderdale. Couldn't get out of there fast enough as a kid, although it's become quite gay now, and so I don't mind visiting my parents. Been in the Bay Area for 30 years, 35 years, 40 years. And been with my partner, Blake, for 36 of those years, and that's probably been the most pivotal thing in my life. I think I learned more from my relationship than anything else. I'm HIV positive, have been for 25 years, since 1981, and that's taught me a lot, especially early on. And that's it. I like what I do. I like my life. I like the people in my life.
Yeah, I know, because I'm in your life. So I'm in your life on the peripheral. I could be in a lot closer, but anyway. So tell me a little bit more about, how do you do, where are you in that relationship and sex with your partner? Are you guys monogamous? Are you open relationship? How does that play out for you?
Well, May, we grew up in the late 70s. It came of age in the late 70s when the whole gay revolution was happening, and so there was lots of sex, and it was considered sort of a political act to have lots of sex. In fact, I think for us it felt like we were really old school and doing something wrong because we were in a relationship, and most everybody we knew wasn't. So we were open. We had an open relationship from the beginning. Blake and I split up after about a year, and he got involved with someone else, and the three of us lived together for 2 years. And so during that period, Blake had two partners, me and Kent and I were best friends. And so we had a little bit of taste of polyamory, I guess you'd call it now. From that point on, we've been open, other than there were times during the AIDS epidemic where we didn't go out at all, and but generally we've been open that whole time, and the way we've done that, or the way that looks, has really varied over time. And I'd say at this point in our lives we're not monogamous, but we're not out there having the kind of, outside sex that we were having 20 years ago or 10 years ago even.
Wow.
So that's just age.
You pretty much covered the span of it.
Yeah, we've been through a lot. We're old.
You're old and experienced.
Yeah, and hopefully wise.
I think so. I definitely think so. Knowing you personally and from our previous conversations and all that stuff, you have a lot of wisdom and a lot of acceptance and a much broader view of sexuality and relationship than I do, or than most of the people that I know.
Well, thank you. One of the things that I thought was quite amusing about the study is we wanted to do a study and find out what people were doing and what we could learn from it. But we also had this sort of narcissistic sense of, well, we'd been through a lot, we tried different things, and what we were doing was working, so maybe we had some kind of answers that would be useful to share. And what was fascinating is maybe 4 or 5 interviews into it, we realized very clearly that every relationship is so different that there aren't, universal answers. It was really an eye-opener to us how diverse relationships are. And so what works for us really doesn't have all that much relevance to someone else, but it is useful in terms of giving people ideas and options and getting them to think about stuff.
Well, that sucks. I want a foolproof stamp insurance guarantee answers.
Yeah, well, I think that's partly gay men tend to be more open in their relationships than probably straight couples. The statistics show anywhere from 50% to 70% of long-term gay male relationships have some kind of agreed upon way of having open relationships. So it's not that they're just cheating. And I think part of that may be because it's men with men, but I also think as gay men we kind of had to invent what our relationships look like. So I think there's a comfort with not having the answers and not knowing exactly what things should look like and not having a clear model that in some ways gives you a lot of freedom to experiment and expect that you will experiment.
Mm. Yeah, that's not what I grew up with.
Yeah.
No, that wasn't the message that I grew up with. I grew up with the message that you get your experiment done, and the minute you say I do with someone, you no longer experiment, and if you do experiment, only with that person.
Right. And
if that person is limited, then you're stuck there for the rest of your life. You're going to have to come back and try it again.
Part of the package is you have kids, and so you don't have sex anymore anyway.
Right.
It's like, you don't have time, you don't have energy, and I think that's, there's certainly gay men that are being parents now, but I do think there's more time and energy in a lot of gay men's lives because they don't have children, that they think of these things and indulge in these things.
Well,
and I think straight people do that too early on and then later on, but not as much during their childbearing years.
Yeah, it's so funny because I know I'm light and I'm laughing about it, but I felt a big pain, when I said that. I'm just like, gosh, I wasn't invited to experiment. Experiment is always looking at such a bad thing. And then you're right, you put the kids in the picture, and it's just like, who has time? I'm exhausted. I don't want to experiment all that. And then there's the other side too that flashed by, and I don't want to step on that, which is there's also a way that we make experimenting so wrong that even with this conversation, I can see you sharing it, and I can hear these noises in my head like, oh God, I hope people don't discount this conversation just because you're a gay man talking about gay relationship. Like, don't throw that away as if like, oh, that's just gay people. They do that. We proper people don't do that. I just felt that pain also.
Well, if they're listening to your show, they're probably over that.
Okay, thank you. Off we go. You're right.
And this is the Bay Area, so.
Okay. Well, tell me a little bit more about your finding, the thing that surprised you.
I don't think we had any earth-shattering surprises, and I think if gay men my age read the study and it's a little ho-hum, it's like, yeah, we know that stuff. But it is very useful to younger gay men because they tend to start out their relationships monogamous now, and they're not aware and not privy to what's come before them and some of what was really prevalent before. We did find out, we had a lot of little surprises.
Well, hang on. Let me just add one point in here. When you said it's useful for younger gay men, and I've just realized that it's also useful, I'm going to just speak for my group, it's also useful for women to hear this. I'm hoping, my demographic is I'm 40-something, almost 50, right? So who have done marriage and who've done it the one way. And I know that I'm not the only one. I have a lot of girlfriends who are in the same boat, similar age, who wants more from their relationship, but have never heard about it, have never been exposed to or encouraged to try other ways. So we can learn from you too. And I'm hoping that the younger women could listen to this and learn from it too, because, boy, I would hate to see them keep locking themselves in the same prison that we went through.
Agree. Although I'm not really proselytizing this, I think. You might be. I was struck by the hardest part about the study was trying to get people to interview, and we met a number of very long-term couples that were monogamous and were happy and still had sex lives, so it's not like this is the only way.
Yeah.
But having said that, clearly this show is trying to give people license to experiment and think outside the box, so that makes sense to me.
Well, I want to hear both. I want to hear about the couples who were monogamous and who stay and who still have great, yummy sex life. And I want to hear about people who experimented and where did they fall down and what did they learn from that. Their unique stories are fine too.
Well, we only studied couples who had agreement to be open. Mm-hmm. So the 86 couples, all of them had open relationships or some kind of agreement around that.
Okay.
We felt like we weren't, having never been monogamous per se, we didn't feel like we were in a good position to go out and interview and understand what that's like, and we figured somebody else could do that. But what we found, I think some of the surprises were that long-term couples were still having hot sex with each other after 10 or 20 or 30 years. Mm. We found that there was a subset of couples who weren't sexual with each other but were very loving and demonstrative and romantic, and they were I'd say the words thrilled that they could stay in relationship and not feel like they had to break up because they didn't have a good sex life between the two of them. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting. That was a subset, but I think that was an important subset. People that their model was, by you and me as partners being able to find outside people to have sex, it really frees us to stay together and be loving towards one another and not have resentment and not feel like we're missing out on, being sexual beings.
Oh, wow. Say that again. That was so cool. It just feels, it's like, oh yeah, duh, but it was so refreshing to hear.
And I found some couples who they never had great sex with each other, even though they were very much in love. So they're like, well, it's not like it just got stale. It wasn't all that good at the beginning, but they were clearly in love, and they were demonstrative. They were people that we enjoyed interviewing and being around, and they clearly enjoyed each other. But they didn't have, they just didn't have the chemistry in the bedroom, and they were like, well, this is stupid. Why should we not be in a relationship just because of that? And I found that refreshing too.
That is so refreshing. It's like I when you said that, I realized that as a heterosexual couple, I just feel like, oh, I didn't realize that I had those two things so closely together that they collapse together. Like not having great sex can't mean that you're totally in love with each other.
Right.
Right?
And if you're not having great sex, it means there's problems in the relationship.
Right.
And that may or may not be true.
Yes, and then that also means that you can't just go and solve that or like separate that out and go, well, we don't have great sex with each other. That's okay. We totally love each other on all the other stuff. So let me go help you find a partner so that you can have great sex with them. That's just so freeing.
Yep. I love your excitement.
Well, it seems so simple. I'm like, how do we make this so complicated and so messy and so painful for each other?
Well, I think it is complex and confusing, and because of it being so charged and emotional, there's a lot of shoulds in the way it's supposed to be, and you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. We get in our own way. I used to have my friend Kent, that was our third, used to say, you don't put shit on candy, and so don't fuck up sex.
Wait, I think that was deep wisdom talking there. What did he say? You don't put shit over
don't
candy?
screw up your sex by getting all psychological and putting all these shits on it. It's like putting shit on candy.
Don't make something good bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What else did you find out?
We found that there's lots of diversity. One of the things where couples were often different, which surprised us, was that one partner really preferred having anonymous encounters, went to gay clubs or whatever, whereas the other partner wanted to have some kind of emotional or at least a connection. So they were more apt to want to play with friends and people that they knew. Mm. And that was a source of tension, but it was also something that, for the most part, couples worked out ways to handle that. Another surprise was a number of couples had rules about what they could and couldn't do, but there were a lot of couples that didn't have rules, and rules weren't a big, it just wasn't how they thought about it. They kind of evolved together, and they figured out what worked or didn't work, and it wasn't a rule-based kind of process for them.
Wow.
Blake and I Blake's very rule-focused, so a lot of our evolution was changing of our rules and trying to find the right rules so nobody ever got jealous and things like that. And that was kind of refreshing to see that, some couples, the very first couple we interviewed, we said, well, what are the rules that you have around going out? And they were appalled, and they said, rules? Why would we want rules? We hate rules. And so it was like, oh, well, we won't ask the next 8 questions we have.
Well, but that in itself is a rule. No rule, damn it.
True.
Wow, that really feels fuzzy, doesn't it? Like, how do they know then where the boundaries are? Or is it just go do it and then come back, and if it becomes a mess, then we work it through?
Well, I think both of those happen. Some couples are very probably in tune with one another, and they're cautious, and they they go in incremental steps and find what's comfortable and what works for them. There are others that are probably reckless. They found out by falling in love with somebody else that maybe they wanted to have some limits around emotional involvement. I was struck by the number of couples that really didn't talk that. They had agreements to be open, but they didn't talk about it all that much, and that surprised me because I'm one of those people that process things a lot and enjoy it. And we certainly found that with the couples that were polyamorous, they talked a whole lot about what they wanted and their relationships and who they were meeting and all of that. But that wasn't the norm necessarily for the rest of the couples. Some couples were really open about who they had outside sex with, and for many, I think it fueled their own sexual relationship with each other. So it got brought into the bedroom that way. Other couples kind of kept it off limits. It's like, I don't want to hear about it. It makes me crazy. So, just do it and don't tell me about it.
Well, I have to tell you, when I was writing up this show, and I was just thinking about this, I was pretty darn sure that there would be one rule, which is, heightened communication will allow you to do this. Like good communication will allow you to do this. But apparently that's not the case either.
Well, I think that is the case. To some extent, I think it's the case. I don't see it as a rule, but when we ask people, what's the most important learning, what's most important to make this work, communication was like 80% of the couples mentioned that. Sometimes they said communication and we don't communicate enough, but they knew it was important. And I'll tell you one story that was, for me, probably stands out more than any other couple we interviewed. It was a couple up in Canada that had been together 30-something years, and they had been ostensibly monogamous that whole time, and several years before I interviewed them, they suddenly I think one of them got caught having sex with somebody else, and they came forward they'd been playing around all along, and so they really looked at that, acknowledged that, and decided that they wanted to have an open relationship. And what was fascinating to me, and this is after 30 years, they're finally coming out about this. They've been living together for 30 years and not talking about it. And what was fascinating is it really opened up their relationship. They started talking at a much deeper level about other things, not just sex. And so they were really excited about the discovery and discovering each other and sharing stuff with each other. And my guess is if I had met them, 3 years before, I wouldn't have had any of the kinds of conversations or would want to ever talk to them again. So that was interesting to me. I think being able to be honest about what you're doing sexually really bleeds over to everything else, being honest about other things too.
That's another duh moment. I'm going to have to make a whole product line of duh.
Exactly.
Wait, it's so duh, I got to say it again. Being able to be honest with your sexuality and your preferences and your wants and desire bleeds into everything else in our life.
Yeah, it does. And one of the things that even just for couples to acknowledge they're attracted to somebody else is a big first step for couples. Often, how many straight people do you know that, when the woman goes by, the guy's sort of allowed to say, gee, she's really hot. They're supposed to furtively look and not notice.
Right. And
same with the women. They don't. They talk to their girlfriends about it, but they don't talk to their husband.
Right, and it's a three-way thing. So that's the couple, and then the woman who's being looked at also get to pretend like like she doesn't like that he's looking
right,
at
and
her.
she's not noticing.
Exactly, and it's just kind of like, what the hell are we doing with this crazy makeup game, that everybody loses in here?
I do think, and there's certainly straight couples that have agreed upon open relationships, and there's probably a lot more of them than we realize. But I also think there's probably more extramarital affairs and things going on undercover and without being upfront and honest about it.
Oh, yes. Oh, I got to share a story. I remember when I was married for 18 years, and in our last few years, we innocently opened up our marriage, and we never cheat or lie to each other. I was always upfront with him, and so we consciously opened up our marriage to invite other people in, and I chose to be really open and told my girlfriends that. And one of my girlfriends said to me, after many months of sitting there and pretending like she's good with it, finally she said to me, it's like, I think there's something wrong with you two. I think there's something psychologically wrong with both of you. Like, why would you want to be open and talk about these things upfront like this? I can understand it if you were having affairs. Everybody have affairs. That makes more sense to me. But there's just something wrong with you to be able to look at this up front like that with each other and agree and talk about and look at the pain that you're going through, And I just thought, oh my God, this is what people actually do.
That's what you're up against.
Yeah.
One of the reactions to, interestingly, a lot of my straight friends were very curious about the study and read it from front to back, which probably isn't true of all my gay friends. So it did strike some chords, and one of the reactions of a straight woman was like, well, we do all this stuff, it's just called business trips. I'm like, yeah, okay, I get that.
Yeah, it's so painful. It's just so painful. Anyway, what else?
Well, there is something.
Yeah.
There is a real joy in being able to talk openly about something that's important to you, and part of it is because you're sharing something, and part of it is it creates a deeper intimacy.
Well, duh. I'm going to have to rename this show. This show is called Duh. And I want to acknowledge how scary and painful it is, because it seems like you risk losing everything from being accepted with that person, from that. You could lose the relationship, you could lose how they look at you, you could lose your children, you could lose your house, you can lose everything that you made important about yourself by being honest about these things.
I think that's true, and we found that in the community as well. Even though open relationships are really prevalent in the gay community, it's not talked about. And so many of the couples we interviewed said their friends didn't know. It sort of was verboten. It was kind of assumed they were monogamous, and no one ever talked about it. And so it perpetuates this myth of nobody's doing it, everybody's being happily monogamous.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Even in the place of openness, there's still so much secrecy and closed doors.
Yeah. For us, it was kind of funny. It was more with straight friends, but also gay friends. It was kind of like a coming out when we told people we were doing the study. I had people go, you're not monogamous. It's like, these are people that have known me, for 35 years, and they had no clue. And so it's which on one level isn't surprising to me, but on another level, it's like, wow, that really says something about how strong our assumptions are about this is the way the world works.
Yeah, and like I just saw, closet, it's like there's so many closets for all of us to come out all the time. And you come out of one closet, you realize you're still in another closet. And you come out of another closet, you come out of another closet. It's amazing.
I have dreams like that.
That would be another show. What dreams you have. Let me just take a break, and then we'll come back and hear a bit more about your study, and also I'd love to hear too about the terrain that you and Blake had maneuvered through, and maybe we could even shift the conversation a bit more to what makes a relationship last. Like if we were to make up stuff about it.
Okay. And
we get to be all wrong about it, 10 years from now or 20 years from now. All right, here we go.
Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies. May is always looking for new angles on sex and lies to raise our consciousness. If you have ideas for a show, please contact her at may@mayvucoach.com. That's MAI@MAIVUcoach.com. Or go to her page on Facebook, Sex, Lies, and Consciousness. While there, please like her page and add your suggestions. Tell me lies, tell me sweet little lies.
Welcome back, everyone. Today, I'm talking about what makes a relationship last, especially from the open relationship perspective from my gay brothers. My friend Lance Lowen is here with me talking about what he learned from his study of 86 couples who are gay men who've been in a long-term relationship with each other and have an open relationship, an agreement to be open with their sexuality and create their relationship from there. If you'd like to join our show, the number to call in is 646-200-0813. 646-200-0813. Back to you, Lance. What else do you want to share with us on this study?
I think just an appreciation of the amount of diversity that there is out there, that if you're going to go this route, there's not even models. We assumed there would be maybe 3 or 4 models. This is, you could do this, and you could always play together, and you could, have strict rules about not getting involved emotionally. And for every rule or every sort of model, there were exceptions, and people kind of discovered that worked great for us for a while, and then it evolved into something else. So it's a much more fluid space than we imagined. We knew that had been true for us, but we thought we were sort of, anomalies. We didn't realize that that's true for most couples. It's not a fixed state that you decide, this is what we're going to do, and it's going to look like this for the rest of our relationship. You might think that, but it generally doesn't happen that way.
Well, it's like a huge opportunity to do a couple of things, to like bust up our living life from the paradigm of right and wrong. It just, when I hear you say that, I was just thinking, wow, what does that do to my right? This is right and this is wrong, because it just seems like every time I decided this is going to be right, something's going to happen and gives me the opportunity to prove that, nope, that's not right either. That something else could be right,
Well, and I would say it's not right or wrong so much as it's what's right for me at this moment, or what's right for us as a couple at this moment. And that doesn't have the moral implications of right and wrong.
Yes, that's so important, and it's such an important tease out here. It's like so often I think I know I do, I forget and I collapse those things together. What's right for me in this moment? There's so many components in that statement that need to be specific about, what's right for me. And then that may be different for us. And then it's just this moment. It's just this moment. The next one will change and we will change, And so it's taking away from that living from security and knowing to really be flexible and evolving and keep changing.
I agree. And as you're talking about what makes a good relationship. I think the flip side of that, because as you're talking, I'm thinking, oh, well, you just live in the moment and you do whatever you want, and that's not true at all. My experience in being in a relationship is I had to learn loyalty wasn't necessarily a value that even made sense to me, and it was an important value my partner had. I had to learn how to do that, and so I had to learn how to make commitments, and that doesn't. So right in the moment, maybe this doesn't feel right or this feels right, but I've got to be able to have the honest, the willingness, the integrity to be honest about that and communicate that. So if I'm having doubts, or I'm wanting to make choices, or I'm agreeing to whatever we committed to, but it's not working for me, I've got to have the balls to put that out there. The other thing that I think for us, for Blake and me as a couple, that was really critical is we both see ourselves on personal growth journeys, that life's not just about a lifestyle or having certain goals and meeting them. It was, you're learning all the time and you're trying to develop yourself and deepen yourself as you get older. And so sex and intimacy and open conversations about that is, one of the key ways to really develop yourself.
Yeah. Wow. That's another clarity that you just kind of popped up there for me. It's like, yeah, most of the time we don't.
May, I'm starting to feel a little self-conscious. Is everything I say, you say, duh.
No, that wasn't a duh moment. This is more like, I was like, wow, I haven't made that clarity so clear. Like, I haven't decided that life and relationship is so that I can deepen my learning, so that I can deepen my understanding of myself. I kind of get it mixed up, I kind of get mixed up between my needs of security. Like, well, I want a relationship because it feels good to be in a relationship, because I want someone, like someone that I care about and love, and that I have a date for Valentine's Day, that kind of stuff. Versus to really say, whoa, whatever it is I'm doing, it's about deepening my lessons so that I can learn about myself.
What's funny is listening to you, I realize how much of this is gender-based too. So as you were talking, I'm thinking from the male perspective, it gets confused with, well, I have this drive and I'm hedonistic and I want to have pleasure. And that's what drives me, wanting to be open, not personally growing. And you're talking about security, and it was like, that never would have occurred to me.
That's right. There you go. Yeah. And so all of these things get so muddy together, right? So that when you said that, I was like, oh, wait, there's some clarity here that I need to just frame that clarity for a second.
and I think there's a really important point here about, if you're going to have an open relationship, you've got to have the communication. And the point I would make is you have to look at what does each partner really need and value. And as we're talking, if you and I were in a relationship, I could say, I have this whole conversation with you about, hey, I want freedom, and it's good to be able to be out there and growing and being able to enjoy yourself and learn, blah, blah, blah. And if your value is you want security and to know that you're loved, that's not going to sit well. It's like, if we're going to have an agreement to go out and be open in our relationship, we've got to have some way of me meeting you and providing your sense of security and helping you meet those values while I meet mine. And I don't think that's what most couples assume. Certainly gay men, they assume everybody's just like them.
Well, from the heterosexual side, that's something that I come across all the time, especially, both in my personal relationship and with my clients, because we all kind of go, there tend to be the one and the other. One person wants just monogamy, just invest in me and in us kind of relationship, and the other one go, I love you so much, I'm committed to you, but in order for me to do that, I got to open me up so I can go and explore, so that I can come back and be more for you.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you run into that with your couples? Your long-term relationship couples. Did they have that, or in order to be a long-term couple, they eventually resolve that somehow?
For most of them, they resolved that. Some of them didn't have it at all to begin with, so it's like they both wanted to be open, and it was a done deal, and they were open, and it's sort of a non-issue for them.
Yeah.
Others had to work at it, and there were a few couples in the study that didn't ever fully resolve that conflict.
Yeah.
And it was a big source of tension for them. So the fact that they couldn't resolve it or hadn't resolved it, it kept cropping up, and when there were problems, the person that really didn't want to have it be open went to their position of like, well, see, it's because we're trying to be open and I don't want that, and
right.
The other person went to the other side. So I do think you have to get on the same page, and what that might look like, though, the agreement that might look like might be something in the middle.
Yeah, how did you ever find out, how did some of them get on the same page?
Some couples found it much more secure to only play with other people together, which is great because you're sharing it and there's a sense of connection and you're learning and having fun together. The downside of that is you've got to find people that are attracted to both of you and
right.
and that you're both attracted to them. That's not the easiest thing. So that often doesn't work for some couples. Other couples, I think that's where the anonymous versus the connection comes in, is they wanted different things and they had to really figure it out. What did they each want? And then I think there's some real role of how do you reassure one another and how do you feel solid. I don't think you can, if you're having problems in your relationship, opening it up is not the time to do that.
Wait, that's
a real duh statement. But you'd be surprised. That's often when people do decide I want to go out and see other people. It's like,
but that's also when people have babies too. When there's something wrong with the relationship, they go and they have a kid. I'm like, are you crazy? Have you lost your mind?
True.
All right. So when
but I do think the other side of that is if you have a really solid relationship, one of the things that's a paradox is opening up the relationship in some ways builds trust, because you're allowing your partner to go out and you're trusting that they're going to be honest. You're trusting that the love that you guys share is not going to be jeopardized, and that they're going to come back and they're going to come back fully. And when that happens over and over, it deepens your sense of trust.
Yeah, and like you won't know until you have to open that door and risk losing.
Right, you have to trust them, and you have to take the risk of trusting, but then, trust is both an act and it's also an outcome.
Yeah, and believe me, I am testament of like, wow, there was so much for us to trust in my own personal relationship with my ex-husband, and that's how come we could do it. And then we went out there and we didn't have the right guidance. I didn't ask help soon enough, and it just didn't work. We were just too arrogant to ask for help, and so that does happen. I'm just saying.
Well,
and I learned from it.
The same way you said, the assumption is you're going to be monogamous and you put it all away. There's an assumption that people have, if we're going to open the relationship, then we're supposed to be able to do it in this free, easy way, and that's bullshit. It's not real life.
So one thing I guess we could say is that this thing called relationship and sex, it's just not easy no matter how you do it.
Agreed.
There you go. That is something universal that we can say.
Or I could say duh.
What else?
So,
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think the one thing I'd say about my own relationship is, to me, a big part of a relationship is being attracted to differences. So I think most partners see things in their partner that they don't have and they'd like to grow in themselves. And so there's a dance around that, and over time, hopefully, instead of resenting those differences, you learn to incorporate them, you grow them in yourself, and you integrate that. And I think that's part of the excitement of being together is there's a growing and adding to your repertoire in terms of who you are as a person.
Wow, that's not a duh statement. That's actually a very profound statement. Because
hey, 1 out of 10, all right.
Well, because it was like that is such a challenge. Because after a while, when the romance and the illusion wear off, the differences are rubbing really raw on both people, right? And it's so hard to see that difference as something worthy, noble, and something that you want to incorporate in yourself. We use it to beat each other over the head with.
Yeah. It also comes up as you start to incorporate it, then you're annoyed by the other person still doing it. So like if I'm learning to be playful because my partner's really playful, once I start to get good at it, I don't want them to be playful. I want to play that role, It's getting in my way if they're doing it, to an extreme and they're really good at it because they've been practicing it all their lives, and I'm just tentatively learning how to do it. So,
right.
There's tension along the way.
Well, and that's also because you're narcissistic, remember? So,
well, that's true.
Yeah, so that's okay.
But the viewers, the audience doesn't need to know that about me, May, but thanks.
Oh, but you said that in the beginning of the show. That's
I did?
Yes. Well, and
part of my self-description.
Well, I maybe you can't answer this question, but like, how did Blake, take on your narcissistic, and how did he embrace that? That's kind of interesting. That's a
well,
pretty.
I don't think he. The point's not to take on your worst aspects of your partner. And he, I think I am somewhat self-absorbed and narcissistic, but he was an only child, so he had his own version of it.
Yeah, no, but that's what I'm saying, though. Actually, I think as he accepts, now, if we hold narcissistic as not a bad thing, like this is just, who isn't? Come on. I could say that because I know I'm one too. But it's like, if we could accept that, like I can just imagine being acceptance of my partner, see that in my partner. If I could see it, that means I have it. So that's one thing, right? And then get annoyed with it, that means I really have it and I don't see it in myself, right? And then come to a place where I could embrace my partner's narcissistic. That just means I'm embracing my own. And then there's peace in the land kind of thing.
That sounds good.
I know, I make up a story about that. Don't bust me. Don't bust up my illusion. Just leave that alone.
That does not jive with my experience.
But see, that's because you have 30-something and you're almost 60, So you.
Yes, that's true, and I always have felt like our relationship's been good and it gets better over time. But for us, we've been in this honeymoon the last almost 10 years, and it's lasted. So there's something, and we worked really hard on our relationship for years, and our differences did take a lot of work. So there's been this kind of payoff that we weren't ever expecting. We always assumed we'd have to work really hard.
Forever.
Forever, and that hasn't been the case as we've gotten older.
Well, tell me a little bit about the time when it was really hard. Like, if you could pick something, because there are a lot of people going through some really hard stuff right now. So many. And it would just be so nice to hear the real hardness from your relationship, and then hear how over time it works itself out and where you are with it. That would be really hopeful.
Well, I think with us, one of the issues, and I'm hesitant because one of the things I had to learn was part of being loyal wasn't being an open book to the outside world, and recognizing that some things are private and my partner wanted to keep them private. So there's a part of me that wants to be respectful of that.
Yeah.
But I do think we struggled at times with jealousy, and I think we struggled with, what's the role of sort of hedonism and having fun versus what's the role of commitment and having a long-term relationship. And they have to be in balance. I think they're both important.
Yeah.
And if I think one of the biggest things for me, a biggest challenge that I think I got on the other side of was learning that not to be self-righteous and think that my way and the way I think about the world's the right way and everybody else is wrong and they just need to figure that out.
Yeah.
When I got that, when I realized and could say I don't know, or this is right for me, or maybe it was right for me, but what you're saying has some validity for you or has some validity for us, that allowed me to really hold the whole and be able to acknowledge that it didn't fit my position, and more importantly allowed me to really honor who my partner was. So a big learning, a challenge for me was my partner really liked the sense of nesting and having some security and having, he didn't want to go to the gym and run into people I had fucked with. He wanted his world to be somewhat secure and that he knew what was going on in it.
Yeah.
And that didn't fit my values.
Yeah.
I was like, whatever, it doesn't bother me.
Right.
But I had to learn that, that's a really good value that he has. It wasn't a natural one for me.
Yeah.
But the more I looked at it, it was like, well, Jesus, I love him. I'm attracted to him because he's unique and different. Why do I think all those things make him wrong? And so if I love him because he's different and he has some different values and he's bringing that to the relationship, then my work's really to honor that and to be respectful of that and see what I can learn from it. And when we started doing that, we really made some headway into our ongoing issues that we'd had for years and years about, what's the right way to do this or that.
That is so tender and so hard. I mean, I could see that lesson probably last at least a decade, if not more, to really work that thing through, isn't it?
Well, and what happened for us is once we started doing that, it kind of reinforces itself. So what was a work initially doesn't feel like work now.
Yeah.
So as I honor him, I get to really enjoy it. And then he's feeling more secure. If he's feeling more secure, then he's suddenly more playful and enjoys the things I like to enjoy. So it's like if you give the other person what they want, you actually get more of what you want too, and it reinforces it.
Right. Yeah.
That's paradoxical. I was always so busy trying to get what I wanted that, I got in the way.
Right, because when we're trying to get what we want, the thought of surrendering to what they want feels like
giving away ourselves, or we're giving away our power, or we're not being true to ourselves.
Right, and we're
we don't have a strong self-identity. All of that, I think, is sort of anathema to relationships.
Yeah.
And it's not about being the same and being codependent. I think you need a healthy interdependence, but it's not, I'm just going to be myself and get used to it.
Right. Yeah, it's just so hard. Like it's hard to explain and get these three places clear. Like there isn't a big wide divider between being a doormat and everything you say is fine, go along to get along, versus being so independent that there's no room for the other person.
Right.
And there's a dance in between of like being true to yourself and at the same time, like you said, honoring and loyalty and commitment, both to yourself and to your partner and to the relationship. It takes a whole lifetime to figure that one out. And some people need to try different partners to figure that out.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, honey, I told you that the hour would go by really fast, and it has.
You mean we're done already?
We're running out of time. I want to just thank you so much for taking the time. And, well, first of all, I want to thank you so much for doing the survey. It's such a powerful, generous and loving message that you're carrying with the result of that survey. It was hugely useful for me hearing what you learned from that.
Great. And that was our point in doing it.
You didn't know that, straight heterosexual women would be so excited about the results.
Well, we found that to be true. One of the suggestions one of my straight friends had was, you should broaden it and write a whole book. And I'm like, that's a great idea, but I don't, I'm tired.
It's on that thing that you just told me before the show, right? Every week you make a list of all the things that you should do or want.
That's a great idea, and then I just throw it away.
So write it down on that list. But it is such a great idea. All right.
Can do it. Okay, thank you, May. It was my pleasure.
Thank you so much, Lance. Lance Lowen, Lowen. If you want, do you want to give them your information if they want to get a hold of you, Lance?
Yeah, if you're interested in the study, it's available free online. It's www.thecouplestudy. So THECOUPLES study, STUDY.com. And you can download the whole study or you can look at it online. There's also contact information if you want to get a hold of me.
That is so awesome and so generous of you to just put it out there freely like that. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate all the couples that participated in it, too. Thanks for doing this, babe.
You're welcome. All right, so my next show will be on February 13th, the day before Valentine's Day. I'd like to dedicate that show to sex stories. So if you have any cool, yummy sex stories, you can email them to me, or you can come on the show and tell your story yourself, or you could tell someone else's story if that feels safer for you. Either way, we just want to titillate and entertain and enjoy ourselves and get all of us all hot and bothered so that you can go out and create your Valentine's Day in a yummy and luscious way. Again, thank you so much for listening to my show, Sex, Lies, and Consciousness. The show is all about being the voice of healthy sex. My ultimate goal is to help us get a hold of our sex, own it, play with it, have power over it, let it fully serve us, and bring us joy and freedom. Talk to you next time. Namaste.